So you want more field of view out of Dream Air, and I hear you. Since my last video, we know that the distortion profile used with the Dream Air at CES 2026 rendered about 103 degrees horizontally. For many people that already felt great. Some even said the field of view was huge. But let's be honest, 103 degrees are still only 103 degrees. And I completely understand why many of you need more. Yap already mentioned in a recent video that the engineers are working on new distortion profiles with multiple field of view modes to choose from within Pimax Play. And that's great news, but you know me, I didn't want to wait, I want to see it now. So I went back to the drawing board together with ChatGPT 5.2. This time using the Dream Air SLAM sample from the CES and not the Crystal Super Micro OLED as last time. We started with current 103 degree profile. We also included two internal profiles we used back in November at the office, 107 degrees and 112 degrees horizontally. From these three profiles and the data we got, we could elaborate and create new profiles with a wider field of view. And honestly, what came out of this was impressive. And it didn't take long either, since we could build on all our previous research and discussions we had last time, me and ChatGPT. We generated new profiles step by step. First 113 degrees horizontally, then 114. 116 degrees and then 118, and finally 120 degrees horizontally. And yes, the results are very good. Up to 118 degrees, distortion and warping is non-existing, or at least as minimal as the 103 degrees profile provides that you saw at CES. No noticeable barrel distortion, no percussion distortion, no geometry issues when panning or pitching, and no obvious edge warping. At 120 degrees, there is very slight edge warping, and it gets noticeable if you look for it. It appears in the last few degrees on each side of the view, maybe 2-3 degrees. But honestly, it's still totally acceptable, especially for sim racing and flight simulators. Now obviously, this doesn't prove perfection. I can only show the values in the Steam VR mirror review here. But after 10 years in VR, I know very well how distortion and warping looks like. And I know how geometrical issues show up when something is wrong in VR. Here, there's surprisingly little to complain about. Honestly, I have almost nothing to complain on what I see with these profiles loaded into the render pipeline. So, what are the limits then? Realistically, we won't go much beyond 118 to 120 degrees horizontally without introducing visible edge distortion or warping. We are limited by several factors. The main one is the per eye horizontal field of view, which is about 101 degrees per eye. Therefore, to extract more total field of view, we need to increase view separation in the distortion profile, and that affects binocular overlap. And we can only go so far by minimizing the overlap before it becomes uncomfortable. With every increase in horizontal field of view, we had to sacrifice some stereo overlap. That part is impossible to avoid. We did try to extending vertical field of view while increasing horizontal field of view, which should in theory help, but that didn't work well. It affected the world scale and it introduced visible edge warping, especially on the top and the bottom side. According to ChatGPT, the vertical field of view sweet spot is around 88 to 90 degrees. Push beyond that and the pitching moves, which is up and down, when you move your head up and down, introduces visible warping at the top and the bottom part of the view. In other words, vertical field of view becomes the limiting factor long before the horizontal does. This is something many people misunderstand or haven't even considered. Horizontal and vertical field of view directly affect each other in the distortion profile, at least with the current lens design. Panel size and placement matters, of course. Without going too deep into this topic, the optical distortion correction itself also plays a role here. There's simply no magic formula without compromises. But here's the good part. If we lock vertical field of view at 88 to 90 degrees vertically and push horizontal field of view to 116, 118 or even 120 degrees, the only real compromise is binocular overlap. And for most users, that is a non-issue. Let's put that into perspective. The default 103 degrees profile has about 95 degrees of overlap. That's roughly 92% of the total view in VR. With the 116 degrees profile, overlap drops to 86 degrees, about 74%. At 120 degrees, overlap is 82.4 degrees, around 68% binocular overlap. And that is not ideal, but it's absolutely usable, especially for simulators. Remember, the Pimax 8KX had between 52 and 65% binocular overlap, depending on what field of view mode you used, and plenty of people still love it today. Now here's another interesting point: performance. At 120 degrees, the rendered resolution is 5520 by 4840 pixels per eye. At 103 degrees, or the default profile used at CES 2026, it's 4984 by 4088 pixels per eye. So only a 13% increase in total pixel count for a 16% wider field of view. That is a very reasonable trade-off in my opinion. So here's my conclusion. For most users, a 110 or 112 degree profile will be perfect. Great for casual VR and general VR experiences on the Dream Air, still between 7 and 9 degrees wider than the field of view we saw at CES with this sample. I don't see any reason why anyone would complain. Profiles at 116 degrees horizontally and beyond work extremely well too, but this will be mostly useful for sim racing and flight simulator enthusiasts. Most importantly, we have now proven that the Dream Air can handle well beyond 112 degrees horizontally without any visible warping or distortion, and the next step is simple. These optional wide field of view modes need to be added to Pimax Play, of course, so you can at least choose between 3 or let's say 5 modes optimally. And that will happen, trust me, since it's already confirmed by Robin. And I have sent all these AI-generated profiles to the engineers for evaluation, and we'll see what happens. At least now we know what's possible. Next up, I'll start working on a max depth profile together with ChatGPT. The goal there is to push binocular overlap towards the theoretical 95% limit or even higher. A smaller field of view, but with maximum possible overlap. But that's something for another video, I guess. Let me know what you think about this in the comments down here below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.